With 2024 coming to a close, I wanted to look forward into 2025 and make some predictions on which fighter I think is going to end the year as the champion. So I'm going to be going through every single UFC weight class and then picking the guy who I think is going to close 2025 as a champ. So we're going to go from the heaviest to the lightest. Would love to hear your guys' predictions down below. If you agree with me, disagree, let me hear it in the comments. But starting off at heavyweight, this looks like a two-horse race here between Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones, and my pick is actually going to be Tom Aspinall here. We somehow started 2024 with Jon Jones as, the official champ, Tom Aspinall as interim, and somehow that held steady throughout the entire year. Typically, if you go into a year with a, undisputed but somewhat disputed champion, and then the interim, those two guys are supposed to fight. We're supposed to figure it out, right? Interim's supposed to fight the guy who's holding the belt. We did not see that in 2024, and I think we're going to get that here in 2025. And if that fight does happen between Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones, I do favor Aspinall. I just think he's a different animal at heavyweight than anyone we've seen Jones fight in his career. We look at Jones' two fights against Cyril Gane and Stipe Miocic. I don't think those two compare to Tom Aspinall. He's so powerful. He has a decent ground game. So if those two were to fight, my pick would be Tom. But I also think there's the chance that this fight just never comes to fruition. Jon Jones could just straight up retire. He doesn't seem super interested in this matchup. He could vacate and try to position himself for the Alex Pereira fight. So I just think, regardless of how this thing plays out, if they fight, I think Tom Aspinall is going to win. He's 8-1 in the UFC. All finishes, 7 in the first round, 5 wins over top 10 fighters. I'm very high on Tom. So if they do fight, I think Tom takes it. But we also have the situation where Jones just vacates, retires, in which case Tom Aspinall would step in and be the champion. And I don't think he's going to lose to any of the other current heavyweight contenders. So Tom Aspinall is going to be my pick up at heavyweight. Now moving down to light heavyweight, this is kind of also a two-horse race here, in my opinion, between Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. My pick is going to be Pereira, but I do think it's close. When we look at Alex, he is 5-0 up at light heavyweight. He has 2 wins over Yuri, a win over Jamal Hill, win over Jan Blachowicz, and then a win over Khalil Roundtree. Magomed Ankalaev, maybe not the most popular guy, but he is clearly a talented fighter. He's on a 13-fight unbeaten streak. The only fight he has lost in his career was his UFC debut against Paul Craig. And I think some people are viewing this Magomed matchup as just like a stylistic nightmare for Alex Pereira. And I'm not going to say it's like the best fight, right? Magomed has some ability to take this fight to the ground, but he is not some sort of like elite high volume wrestler that's just like the worst matchup in the world for Alex here. Magomed has a 31% takedown accuracy. He lands under 1 takedown per 15 minutes, and he has like 0 submission threat. He has 0 submission attempts in his UFC career. So I'm not saying that he won't go up against Alex and just push a super wrestling heavy game plan. That's what he should do, and if he does, he could definitely get the win. But I don't think this is like Alex Pereira going up against a prime Daniel Cormier who's just going to ragdoll him. So if they were to fight, I would give the slight edge to Poatan. Could be close. I could see Magomed winning for sure, but I would give Poatan the slight edge. And it doesn't seem like anyone else has really had anything for him. There's also the possibility that this fight just never happens. It seems like the UFC has very little interest in making this happen. They could make Magomed fight again. There's always the possibility he slips on a banana peel, ends up losing that fight, and we never end up getting that matchup. Outside of Magomed, I guess we could see a Carlos Ulberg fight. Interesting storyline with him being training partners with Izzy, but would favor Alex in that one. I guess the other concern would be if Alex just straight up moves up to heavyweight. But I think if he takes a fight at heavyweight, whether that was against Jon Jones or against Tom Aspinall, I would assume he would hold on to that light heavyweight belt. And it doesn't seem like that's the fight that's going to happen right away. So my pick at light heavyweight is Alex Pereira. Magomed would be my runner-up. Then looking at middleweight, my pick is going to be Khamzat Chimaev, and I feel pretty good about this. We already have Dricus du Plessis, Sean Strickland booked, the rematch. And I do think Khamzat, now, there's obviously going to be some risk with his health issues, some of his legal stuff. We don't really know which countries he can fight in. Seems like he can't really fight in the United States. But barring, visa things and health issues, Khamzat should be getting a title shot this year. And if he gets a title shot, I think he runs through both these dudes. We look at what he did to Robert Whittaker, Dricus du Plessis, Sean Strickland. These guys are not like flawless wrestlers. I honestly think Khamzat just takes him down and submits him in the first round. That would be my pick. Now, if the fight gets extended into the deeper rounds, DDP, Strickland, they have more experience there. They've been able to hold up in those championship rounds. That could be a problem for Khamzat. But if Khamzat's getting a title shot, which I think he will get, I would favor him against pretty much anyone else in this weight class. So Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight. Now, looking at welterweight, I'm predicting another new champion here. I'm going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov. It seems very obvious that Belal Muhammad is going to be defending his belt against Shavkat. And I feel like before the Ian Gary fight, people were talking about Shavkat like he was this, unbeatable boogeyman. He was going to go in and just completely destroy Belal Muhammad. And it seems like after that one fight, the Shavkat-Ian Gary fight, people have completely flipped. They now favor Belal. They think Shavkat, has all these weaknesses. And I'm not going to say that Shavkat looked great in that Ian Gary fight. It was very competitive. A few things go a different way. He definitely could have lost that fight. But Shavkat going up against Belal is a very different stylistic matchup than Ian Gary. And I think people aren't considering the fact that Ian Gary was pretty untested also. So maybe they had this idea of what Ian Gary was, but he showed great takedown defense. We don't know if Shavkat just couldn't really get the wrestling going or if Ian Gary just has truly top tier takedown defense that's still kind of up in the air. But I still favor Shavkat in that Belal fight, especially in the striking department. I know Shavkat wasn't blowing away Ian Gary. It was competitive. It was close, but that's a very different matchup going from Ian Gary to Belal Muhammad. I still think Shavkat's going to have success on the feet, and I just don't know if Belal's going to go in and out-wrestle him. So I still favor Shavkat. Could Belal win? Sure, totally possible. But my pick would be Shavkat, and if he beats Belal, I don't think he's going to lose the belt this year. Probably would have one other title defense. Could be a variety of different options, but I would pick Shavkat to hold on to that title. Now, these next two weight classes are kind of interesting because I would assume most people expect the champion to remain the champ. They don't think they're going to lose. For lightweight, I am picking Islam Makhachev to hold on to that belt. I don't think he's going to lose the Arman rematch. Maybe Oliveira gets another shot. I still think you'd have to favor Islam there. My concern with Islam is not him losing the title. It's him potentially moving up to 170 and vacating, right? This is something that's been talked about, especially if Belal loses to Shavkat. I would not be shocked to see an Islam Makhachev, Shavkat Rakhmonov fight up at 170, in which case, if he wins, or maybe he just makes the commitment to move up, then that means he might not end the year as champion, but it's going to be tough for me to pick someone based on a hypothetical move up and then vacate from Islam. If I don't think he's going to lose at 155, he's going to be my pick here. And then a very similar thing down at featherweight here. My pick is going to be Ilia Topuria, but I have the same questions. He has looked unbeatable at 145. I do not think he is going to lose to Volk in the rematch. I think he beats Movsar. I think he beats Diego Lopez. Whoever they want to put up against him at 145, I think you have to favor Ilia. But he has talked about, he's already talked about vacating and moving up to 155. So he could move up, potentially get a fight against Islam. If Islam moves up, maybe the vacant title is between Ilia and someone up at 155. So once again, the concern is him vacating. But if I don't think anyone's going to beat him, I'm not going to throw a shot in the dark on him vacating and then someone else winning an interim. Could also just be no one has the belt at the end of the year. We have a couple more men's divisions here. At Bantamweight, I think this is a two-horse race between Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov. These guys are facing early on in 2025. And I think the winner of that fight is going to hold the belt throughout the entire year. We know how good Merab is with clear wins over Petr Yan, Sean O'Malley, Henry Cejudo, Jose Aldo. And then you look at Umar. He's just so well-rounded, clean striking, impressive grappling, very well-rounded, can win in a couple different ways. If Merab, is stuffing the takedowns, I do think he can win on the feet. And you'd assume his takedown defense is good enough to kind of, fend off the wrestling of Merab. There are still question marks, Merab pushes a crazy pace. Can Umar hold up to that if he's, not just being the hammer the entire time? My pick is going to be Umar. I think he, potentially wins this fight against Merab. I don't feel overly confident with that pick, but like I said, I think whoever wins, whether it's Umar or Merab, they are going to hold the belt. I don't think Merab has built up enough good fortune with the UFC where they would give him a rematch, or even if he picked up another win. I don't think he's fighting for the belt again if he loses. So my pick is going to be Umar, but if Merab wins in January, I would expect him to hold on to the belt and potentially for a very long time, because I think Umar is the clear top contender here. Merab gets past him. He should continue to be the champion. And then the final men's weight class here, flyweight. I mean, how do you pick against Alexandre Pantoja at this point? 7-fight win streak. He is 9-0 against the current top 10. Bunch of different potential challengers here. A lot of these guys he already has wins over. Kai Kara France, Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno, Manel Kopp. Like, he has wins over all 4 of those dudes. I think Mohamed Mokaev could come back into the UFC and get a title shot. So a ton of different names he could face, but I just don't see any of them beating him at this point. Could he get caught? Sure. It's always possible, but he is getting up there in age, but he's just had so much success over these guys. And I think it's also interesting because the UFC might kind of put him on ice a little bit, let this division develop, get some contenders. So if he's only fighting, once, twice this year, I think that even, pushes it more towards him retaining that belt. Now, looking at the women's weight classes, not going to spend a ton of time on women's bantamweight. I think Kayla Harrison gets that title shot. I think she takes on Juliana Pena, and I think she just ragdolls or finishes her. And I think Kayla Harrison becomes the bantamweight champion. For flyweight, I am picking Valentina Shevchenko to hold on to that belt. I don't feel overly confident with that pick. I do think she's beatable. I think she's fighting Manon Fiorot next, or that should be the fight. Manon is, a solid striker. I could see her beating Valentina, but the way she's kind of gone to the wrestling, the way she just completely neutralized the striking of Alexa Grasso, I feel like you have to pick her. She could also potentially fight Blanchfield, Macy Barber, maybe Rose gets a title shot, Natalia Silva, maybe a super fight with Zhang Wei Li. So there are a couple of names out there that she could fight, but she hasn't been overly active. So if I can bank on Valentina winning like 1 or 2 fights and remaining the champion, she is going to be my pick. And then the final weight class here is going to be women's strawweight. And this might be my hottest take of the video. I'm assuming pretty much everyone is just going to pencil in Zhang Wei Li to retain that title. I am actually going to go with Tatiana Suarez here. I know Wei Li has looked great as of late. She is like completely dominant in her last 4 fights, but I'm very, very high on Tatiana Suarez as long as she can make it to fight day. Like, if she is healthy enough to step in that octagon, Tatiana Suarez is a real problem. She is 10-0. She is 7-0 in the UFC, finishes over Alexa Grasso, Carla Esparza, Jessica Andrade. And the biggest, hurdle for Tatiana has been getting, into the cage, actually making it to the fight. But it's also been just getting booked for the title fight. Like, she's probably been deserving of this at least a couple of times, but it's tough for the UFC to, put her in that spot, invest in her if they're not confident she can actually make the fight. And if she wins the belt, like, you want to have some confidence that she's going to be in there and be able to, defend it somewhat consistently, right? You don't want her to win the belt and then be out for an extended period of time. She has gotten that title shot. I think she is by far the best grappler that Zhang Wei Li will have faced here. And even though Wei Li has been dominant, I do think she's somewhat vulnerable on the ground. Rose racked up 7 minutes of control time against her. Carla Esparza landed a takedown. Yan Xiaonan landed 3. And I'm not saying these, women did a ton with those. Like, she brutalized Esparza. It was a clear win over Yan Xiaonan, like nearly finished her multiple times. But my point is that if these other fighters are able to get to those spots, land a takedown, rack up some control time, I think Tatiana Suarez is going to be able to take way more advantage of that in their matchup. Wei Li super explosive, but I do think there are opportunities here for Tatiana Suarez to bank some rounds, dominate on the ground, potentially find a submission. One of the things that makes me kind of weary about picking Tatiana Suarez is the fact that even if she wins, she might have to beat Zhang Wei Li for a second time. There's not a ton going on at 115. Wei Li, 3 straight title wins, reigning champion, probably the biggest star in the division. If Suarez wins, it's probably going to be an immediate rematch, which means she would have to beat her twice. So that's somewhat concerning. I think you can, really push it and say they're fighting early in the year. If they do the rematch, if Suarez loses, then maybe you get the trilogy like November, December, probably unlikely. Suarez, Zhang Wei Li, not the most active fighters, so expecting them to fight together 3 times is probably unlikely. But if I do favor Tatiana Suarez in the fight, I'm going to pick her here. I think, like I said, probably going to be a hot take, but my pick is going to be Tatiana Suarez. But that's going to wrap it up for all the weight classes here. Let me know your picks. If you disagree, agree, let me know down below, and I will see you all in the next one.